endure the humiliation of watching his own bodyguards disobey direct orders, beat and kill innocent civilians, and then murder his chief advisor right in front of him. He identified the leaders of the insurrection, though, and in time, he promoted them away from Rome to positions in the provinces, where they were duly punished for their past crimes. Once Ulpian was disposed of, though, the Guard seemed to return to their senses, and Alexander's regime appeared safe for the time being. But they were soon dealt another blow, and in 224, Julia Maesa, the guiding light of the Severan comeback, died, leaving Alexander without his most cunning advisor, and leaving his mother in sole charge of Alexander's emerging character. In guiding her son, she took the most direct route she could think of, and physically limited the young emperor's access to those whom she did not approve of. The sycophants who always wind up circling power like flies around garbage were kept out of the palace, and Alexander was only allowed to spend time with teachers and senators and advisors who had been pre-screened by Julia. Also well aware that idle hands are the devil's plaything, she refused to allow Alexander to simply lay about in the palace all day. Instead, she forced him, not necessarily against his will, as it is difficult to distinguish his will from his mother's at this point, to go down to the forum and preside over the daily legal trials. As emperor, he was expected to be the supreme judicial authority in the empire, and he needed to get himself acquainted with the rigors of doing a good job at it. Naturally, he was advised by expert lawyers when making his decisions at first, but in time, he learned how to be an impartial judge, and throughout his reign, he always paid careful attention to his duties as the final arbitrator of justice. 224 AD is also notable for another significant development in the history of the world: the collapse of the Parthian Empire and the rise of the Sassanids. For 400 years, the Parthian Empire had successfully ruled the remains of the old Persian Empire, and, when it was united, it was more than a match for their neighbor to the west. But their devolved governmental structure and highly contested dynastic struggles meant that more often than not, the Parthian Empire was not united. In the early 200s AD, a royal family down in the southwest of the empire, that is, they were among the kings who the Parthian king of kings ruled, began to get ambitious about their fortunes. They muscled out other aristocratic families, and pretty soon were the dominant power in the region. With the Parthian royal family engaged in yet another dynastic struggle back in the eastern half of the empire, the eldest son of this family, a man named Shapur, established an almost completely autonomous kingdom near the Red Sea. After a dynastic struggle of their own brought his brother Ardashir to power, the new king forced neighboring provinces to swear fealty to him and his family. Now that he was operating across borders, the Parthian king finally took notice of what was going on, and sent one of the neighboring governors to crush Ardashir. But Ardashir won the battle handily. So the Parthian king decided he needed to go put this upstart in his place, and personally led an army to do just that. But in the ensuing battle, Ardashir not only crushed the Parthian army, but killed the king in the process. In 224, Ardashir entered Ctesiphon and had himself crowned King of Kings. With Ardashir's victory, the Parthian Empire, as it had been known, came crashing down, replaced by what we call today the Sassanid Empire. The name Sassanid likely derives from the name of Ardashir's grandfather, who was the one who initiated the ambitions of the family. For the next 400 years, the Sassanids would rule an empire that at its height would extend from Egypt to India and from Saudi Arabia to Russia. We will have much more to say about the Sassanids as we move forward, so for now, I'll stick with the particular machinations of its first king, Ardashir. Not unlike Vologases, who kicked off a war with Rome in the 160s AD, because he took his string of domestic victories as proof that he was indestructible, Ardashir was similarly convinced of his own irresistibility. Following his crowning as the new King of Kings, he marched around the old dominions of the Parthians and established his own, far more centralized authority. By 230, he felt secure enough at home to begin looking beyond the frontier. No one would ever accuse Ardashir of thinking small, and when he surveyed his new country, he believed that what was really his birthright was all the territory that had once encompassed old Persia. This meant Syria and Egypt, and really, everything possessed by Rome as far west as the Hellespont. So, yeah, he believed big. But I'll come back to Ardashir and his coming invasion of Rome next week, and for now, we'll get back to Alexander as he tried to hold his own empire together. In 225, probably figuring that it was never too soon to begin producing legitimate heirs, Julia Mamaea arranged for her now 16-year-old son to marry the daughter of a prominent senator. But soon after the wedding, Julia discovered something horrible. Alexander actually liked his wife, and wanted to spend time with her. This, of course, cut into Julia's own time with the emperor, and was no doubt all kinds of threatening to her position as the preeminent woman in Alexander's life. So in 226 or 227, Julia made a move to restore balance to the universe. First, Alexander's father-in-law was accused of trying to turn the Praetorians against the young emperor, and for this crime, he was executed. Whether or not he actually did what they say he did is still an open question. And then second, in the aftermath of the scandal, Alexander's wife was exiled to Libya. The emperor was heartbroken, but he refused to go against his mother's wishes. This inability to stand up to his mother was the downside of Alexander's naturally mild temperament. This temperament was mostly great for the empire. He never slaughtered people at the drop of a hat, or plundered estates whenever the fancy struck, or started wars for no reason. But he also could never bring himself to challenge his mother, even when she began to become a liability. For these reasons, the reign of Alexander, as good as it was in comparison to his predecessors, was not all roses. Though the dark storm clouds still seemed to be biding their time, they were also constantly swirling and shifting, and generally making everyone nervous. Alexander's move to try to correct the exorbitant pay of the soldiers was a source of constant concern, as uprisings and mutinies broke out to the tune of at least a couple of rebellions a year. These incidents were kept local and isolated, and put down one by one as soon as they cropped up, but there was definitely something to worry about in the pattern of often violent disobedience in the legions. Making matters worse was the fact that the Praetorians were not exempt from mutiny, as they had already so amply demonstrated when they rioted against Ulpian. So the imperial family had to remain on guard, not just against insurrection in the provinces, but also insurrection in their own backyard. This fear took down the second great member of Alexander's governing council in 229, when Cassius Dio was exiled from Rome, following threats by the Praetorians that they had grown tired of the sarcastic historian. Dio had been born in 155 in Bithynia into a wealthy family, and after enrolling as a senator during the reign of Commodus, he served in a variety of administrative posts during the reign of Septimius Severus. He became so trusted by the emperor that his political career was capped by stints as the governor of both Africa and Pannonia. After Severus's death, Dio seems mostly to have retired from public life, and spent the bulk of his time completing an 80-volume history of Rome. Written in Greek, the history begins with the arrival of Aeneas in Italy, and went right up to the present day, that is, the reign of Alexander. Though only fragments remain of the monumental work today, the history by Cassius Dio is one of the most important resources we have in piecing together the story of the Roman Empire. When Alexander, and with him some semblance of sanity, came to power, Dio returned to public life to serve on Alexander's council, and it is said that he was held in particular esteem by the young emperor. That esteem is what made it so difficult for Alexander to react to the latest threats emanating from the Praetorian camp. The guard did not like Dio, and they wanted him gone. But at first, Alexander tried to buck them and back his favorite historian. To demonstrate his loyalty, he and Dio shared a consulship in 229, but that only inflamed the Guard even further. Facing a bloody coup or abandoning his friend, Alexander was forced to choose the latter. Following their shared consulship, Cassius Dio was sent back home to Bithynia, where he died soon after. But Alexander would not have long to mourn for his dead advisor. In 230 AD, word came of a shocking development in the east. The new king of Parthia, wait, is it even still Parthia anymore? Had suddenly decided that he was going to invade Roman territory. He had gathered a massive army on the banks of the Tigris and was making periodic raids into the empire. And this wasn't small-time banditry either. By the looks of things, the new monarch of the East was planning something huge. Next week, Alexander will get his first taste of war. After the young emperor fails to settle things peacefully, he will need to muster an army to take on the most serious foreign threat to the empire since the days of the Marcomannic coalition. But before we go this week, I want to let you all in on something that the History of Rome has been working on for the last few months that is so close to being finalized that I'm going to go ahead and reveal its existence now, a little bit in advance of a formal announcement that I'll be making very soon. No, it's not a book, not yet. But how about this? An official History of Rome Roman History Tour. All I'm going to say about it right now is that if you've ever thought about wanting to plan a Roman history themed vacation and were thinking maybe May 2011 sounded like a good time to go, well, then you should hold off for a minute on booking tickets until you have a chance to check out the details of the official History of Rome Roman History Tour. Those details will be coming shortly, and I can't tell you how excited I am about it because, with a little luck, I'll see you in Rome. This week's episode is brought to you by Audible. As you know, Audible is the internet's leading provider of audio entertainment with over 60,000 titles to choose from. When you're done with this episode, go to audiblepodcast.com/Rome. That again, audiblepodcast.com/Rome. By going to that address, you qualify for a free book download when you sign up for a 14-day trial membership. There is no obligation to continue the service, and you can cancel anytime and keep the free book. You can also keep going with one of their monthly subscription options and get great deals on all your future audiobook purchases. This week, I'm going to recommend How the Irish Saved Civilization by Thomas Cahill, which tells the important story of how many of the ancient texts that this very podcast is based on managed to survive intact through the darkest period of the Dark Ages. Just remember to go to audiblepodcast.com/Rome so that they know who sent you. Hello, and welcome to the History of Rome. Episode 106, Barbarian at the Gate. The first 8 years of Alexander Severus' reign proved to be a relatively quiet and prosperous time for the empire. The period was not totally without problems,